The hidden underground cavern stretched nearly 50 feet beneath our modest Louisiana homestead. Its ancient walls studded with gleaming veins of diamond-bearing kimberlite, worth over $220 million, alongside geological surveys and mining claims, dating back to the 1870s that would reveal the truth behind our bayou's most legendary lost fortune. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The discovery would completely vindicate my mother's seemingly foolish $500 land purchase that everyone ridiculed, transform our family from food stamp recipients to multi-millionaires overnight, and prove that sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden directly beneath the places everyone else dismisses. The unforgiving Louisiana summer of 2023 remains seared into my memory as the season that nearly destroyed what little my family had managed to build after years of financial hardship. Our dilapidated bayou house stood just days away from being swallowed by rising floodwaters, and we had exactly $927 in our bank account to somehow perform a miracle that would save us from becoming homeless. The waterlogged ground beneath our property concealed a secret that would transform our desperate circumstances into wealth beyond anything 3 generations of Mitchell women had ever dared to imagine possible. My name is Rachel Mitchell, and I'm the daughter of the woman everyone in Cypress Parish, Louisiana called Swamp Witch Elaine, the single mother who shocked our entire town of 2,134 people when she used her last $500 from an insurance settlement to buy 15 acres of what every local expert, real estate agent, and developer declared to be the most worthless swampland in Cypress Parish. What I'm about to share is the absolutely true story of how my desperate attempt to create an emergency drainage system to save our sinking house led to the discovery of one of the richest diamond deposits ever found on private land in North America, worth more than most people earn in 15 lifetimes. This isn't just a story about finding diamonds buried in our backyard. It's about a family that refused to surrender when everyone from the bank manager to our own relatives said we were destined to fail. About a mother whose seemingly insane real estate decision turned out to be the most brilliant investment in our parish's history. And about learning that sometimes the most valuable things in life are hidden in the exact places that everyone else has written off as completely hopeless. The 15 acres of seemingly worthless Louisiana swampland that had been nothing but a source of community ridicule and crushing financial burden for our family would soon reveal that it had been protecting our salvation all along. Waiting patiently beneath layers of mud and decades of accumulated doubt for the moment when we would be desperate enough to dig deeper than anyone had ever bothered to look in the 150 years since the original settlers abandoned this land as uninhabitable. But to understand how a single mother with 2 children, no husband, no college education, and no money could make a land purchase that would eventually be valued at over $220 million, you need to understand the kind of woman who would spend her last $500 on property that literally everyone told her was throwing money away. You need to understand Elaine Rebecca Mitchell, a woman whose determination would prove stronger than poverty, whose intuition would prove more accurate than expert opinions, and whose faith in possibilities would prove more valuable than any financial education. Elaine Mitchell's story began not with success, but with the kind of devastating personal setback that destroys most people's ability to dream about better futures. She was born Elaine Rebecca Doucette in 1980 in the small fishing community of Thibodaux, Louisiana, the middle daughter of shrimpers whose family had worked the same coastal waters for 5 generations. Her childhood was spent learning that success came through hard work, careful planning, and respect for the natural environment that provided everything a family needed to survive and prosper in the harsh bayou ecosystem. Preparing and narrating. This story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Elaine's early life followed the traditional patterns of Gulf Coast families. She excelled in school, particularly in environmental science and chemistry, showing an intuitive understanding of ecosystem management and water systems that impressed her teachers and suggested a possible future in environmental engineering or marine biology. She was planning to attend Louisiana State University on an academic scholarship when her world was shattered by a devastating Category 4 hurricane that changed everything she thought she knew about security, planning, and the reliability of the future. In August 2000, just 2 weeks before Elaine was scheduled to begin college, Hurricane Deborah tore through Thibodaux with 145 miles per hour winds and a 15-foot storm surge that destroyed the family's fishing boats, their home, and virtually every asset that 5 generations of Doucette family members had accumulated through decades of hard work. Within 3 months of the hurricane, Elaine and her parents found themselves living in a FEMA trailer, financially ruined, and completely dependent on government assistance programs that provided bare survival but offered no path toward rebuilding what they had lost. The federal disaster assistance barely covered immediate needs, and the insurance settlement was tied up in bureaucratic red tape that would take years to resolve. Elaine spent the next 7 years battling through the complex web of disaster relief programs, insurance claims, and rebuilding efforts while trying to support her devastated parents and piece together her interrupted education through community college courses and online programs. The academic scholarship she had earned was gone. Her plans for university study were impossible, and her future seemed limited to minimum wage jobs and permanent dependence on disaster assistance programs. But Elaine possessed something that couldn't be destroyed by natural disaster, poverty, or bureaucratic obstacles: an unshakable belief that land ownership was the foundation of security and independence. Despite having no money, no credit, and no realistic prospects for conventional real estate financing, Elaine spent years studying property records, auction notices, and tax sale listings throughout Louisiana, looking for opportunities that others had missed or dismissed as worthless. Elaine's first break came in 2008 when she discovered that she was eligible for a rural development loan through a program she had never heard of, based on her income level and willingness to purchase property in economically disadvantaged areas. The program provided small loans for rural property purchases, but the properties had to meet specific criteria that made most desirable land too expensive to qualify. Elaine spent months researching available properties within her limited budget range, focusing on land that had been abandoned, foreclosed, or otherwise written off by conventional buyers. She was looking for property that had potential value that others couldn't see. Land that might have hidden assets, development possibilities, or ecological potential that had been overlooked by previous owners and current market evaluations. The property that would change everything was listed in the Cypress Parish tax sale records as Parcel 52C, 15 acres. Unimproved, no structures, no utilities. Residential development prohibited due to wetland conditions. Mineral rights unknown. Accessible only by boat during rainy seasons. The parish assessor had valued the property at $450. And it had been abandoned by 4 different owners over the previous 40 years, each of whom had purchased it hoping to develop some kind of recreational or residential use, only to discover that the soil was too waterlogged, the drainage was too poor, and the location was too remote for any practical purpose. But Elaine saw something in the property description that others had missed. The notation "mineral rights unknown" suggested that previous owners had never conducted proper surveys to determine what might be beneath the surface. The repeated failures at development indicated that the soil contained something unusual, but that something might be valuable rather than problematic. Elaine made the 190-mile drive from her cramped apartment in Baton Rouge to Cypress Parish in her unreliable 1998 Toyota Corolla to personally inspect the property that everyone said was worthless. What she found was 15 acres of cypress swamp and thick undergrowth that seemed to be hiding something unusual beneath the surface. The ground had an unusual firmness in certain areas despite the surrounding wetland conditions, and there were strange rock formations that didn't match typical Louisiana bayou geology. The unusual rock formations that caught Elaine's attention weren't ordinary limestone or sandstone typical of Louisiana wetlands. They were igneous intrusions that looked remarkably similar to kimberlite deposits she had studied in her geology courses, the type of formation known to sometimes contain diamonds. It wasn't fool's rock or worthless mineral deposits. It was potentially diamond-bearing kimberlite visible on the surface, overlooked by decades of potential buyers who didn't know what they were seeing. Elaine's science education and childhood in bayou country had taught her to recognize geological anomalies that indicated potentially valuable mineral deposits. And everything about this property suggested that previous owners had been trying to drain what could be one of Louisiana's undiscovered diamond-bearing formations. Elaine spent 4 days camping on the property, wading through every acre, collecting rock samples, and documenting the geological features that convinced her this land contained valuable minerals that could provide the financial security she had been seeking since losing everything in that terrible hurricane 7 years earlier. She also discovered that the property included unusual water rights to an underground spring and bordered on protected state wilderness that would prevent commercial development from encroaching on the natural beauty that made the area valuable for conservation or ecotourism purposes. The decision to purchase the property required Elaine to spend literally every dollar she possessed. The $500 purchase price represented her entire insurance settlement from the hurricane damage, leaving her with no money for moving expenses, no funds for property development, and no resources to conduct professional geological surveys that might confirm or disprove her theories about the land's mineral potential. Everyone Elaine consulted about the purchase told her she was making a terrible mistake. The parish environmental officer warned her that the land was prone to seasonal flooding that made it unsuitable for any residential use. The local real estate agent told her that the property had no resale value and would be impossible to develop or improve. Her social worker advised her that spending her settlement money on remote Louisiana swampland would make her ineligible for certain assistance programs and could jeopardize her housing stability. Even Elaine's mother begged her not to make the purchase, arguing that $500 could pay for medical expenses, transportation, or other immediate needs that would improve their quality of life without the enormous risk of investing everything in property that might prove to be completely worthless. But Elaine had learned through 7 years of poverty and struggle that playing it safe was actually the riskiest strategy of all. Government assistance programs provided survival, but never provided the opportunity to build wealth or achieve genuine independence. Minimum wage jobs offered income, but never offered the chance to accumulate assets that could provide long-term security for her family's future. Land ownership, even land that others considered worthless, represented the possibility of building something permanent that couldn't be taken away by bureaucratic decisions, natural disasters, or economic recessions. Even if the property never proved valuable for mineral extraction, it would provide a place where Elaine could establish a home, develop sustainable harvesting of native plants, and create the kind of self-sufficient lifestyle that would reduce her dependence on systems that had already failed her once. Elaine completed the property purchase in July 2008, using her insurance settlement to pay the $500 purchase price, plus $175 in legal fees and documentation costs. She moved to Cypress Parish with her mother in September 2008, renting a small trailer in town while making plans to develop their property into a homestead that could support both of them, independently of government assistance programs. The first 3 years of bayou life were incredibly difficult for Elaine and her mother. Elaine worked multiple minimum wage jobs: convenience store clerk, waitress at the local diner, cleaning houses for wealthy families while spending every free hour clearing brush, mapping the property's water patterns, and preparing areas for eventual construction of basic shelter and sustainable harvesting operations. Elaine's mother, despite her initial skepticism, contributed by managing their finances, researching government programs that could provide assistance with wetland development, and maintaining their rented trailer, while Elaine spent long days working on the land. Together, they lived on less than $22,000 per year, saving every possible dollar to invest in tools, materials, and infrastructure that would eventually allow them to live on their property full-time. In 2011, Elaine met Daniel James Mitchell, a hydrologist who had moved to Louisiana from Colorado to work on wetland restoration projects. Daniel was impressed by Elaine's determination and ecological knowledge, and he possessed the water management expertise that Elaine needed to develop their property into a livable homestead. They married in 2012, combining their limited resources and creating the partnership that would make Elaine's homesteading dreams achievable. Daniel brought hydrological expertise, some basic equipment, and a modest savings account to the marriage. But more importantly, he brought belief in Elaine's vision for their property's potential. While others continued to mock Elaine's worthless Swampland purchase, Daniel could see the possibilities she had recognized: the unusual geological formations, the clean water source, the biodiversity, and the independence that land ownership could provide for their growing family. Elaine and Daniel's first child, my sister Sophia Zhang Mitchell, was born in 2013. I followed in 2015. By this time, Elaine and Daniel had built a modest, elevated cabin on their property and were living full-time on the land that everyone still considered worthless, but that had become the foundation of our family's hopes for building something better than the poverty and uncertainty that had defined Elaine's earlier life. The elevated cabin that Elaine and Daniel established on their property was far from luxurious, but it represented something that Elaine had never experienced since losing her childhood home in 2000, a place that belonged to her family completely, that couldn't be taken away by landlords, government agencies, or natural disasters beyond her control. The property provided space for a substantial medicinal herb garden that supplied both food and income through Elaine's growing business selling native plant remedies at local farmers markets. The natural spring provided clean water for household use and irrigation. The surrounding forest provided materials for crafts and construction that Daniel used to improve our home during Louisiana's sweltering summers. Most importantly, the land provided the security and independence that allowed Elaine to focus on raising her children rather than worrying constantly about rent, evictions, or other housing uncertainties that plagued many families in our economically struggling parish. But even as our family was building a stable, self-sufficient life on Elaine's worthless property, the ridicule from the local community continued. Other families in Cypress Parish had achieved success through conventional approaches: education, steady employment, home mortgages, and traditional investment strategies. Elaine's approach of buying abandoned swampland and trying to create value through sweat equity struck many people as naive, risky, and destined for failure. The local bank manager frequently reminded Elaine that her property had no resale value and couldn't be used as collateral for business loans or home improvement financing. Real estate developers told prospective buyers that the Mitchell property was an example of what happened when people made emotional rather than practical decisions about land purchases. Even some of our neighbors suggested that Elaine was setting a bad example for her children by pursuing unrealistic dreams instead of accepting the limitations that came with her economic circumstances. But Elaine had learned something during her years of poverty and struggle that her critics had never experienced: that conventional wisdom often reflected conventional limitations rather than actual possibilities. The same experts who called her land purchase foolish had never spent time studying the property, researching its history, or imagining ways that its unique characteristics might create value. Elaine continued developing our property throughout the 2010s, adding infrastructure, improving the drainage, and creating systems that increased our family's self-sufficiency while reducing our dependence on outside resources. She established apiaries that produced specialty bayou honey for sale at farmers markets across 3 parishes. She cultivated rare medicinal plants native to Louisiana, wetlands that provided treatments for everything from skin conditions to digestive issues, supplying local holistic practitioners and building a reputation for quality botanical remedies. She created a workshop where she crafted unique cypress wood furniture and household items that she sold through online marketplaces to customers who appreciated traditional bayou craftsmanship. Every improvement Elaine made to our property was designed not just to meet our immediate needs, but to create long-term value that would benefit our family for generations. She planted native fruit trees that would mature as her children grew up. She established water gardens with valuable aquatic plants that would provide annual income without requiring replanting. She built structures using traditional cypress post-construction that would withstand Louisiana's harsh climate for decades with minimal maintenance. By 2019, our family was living comfortably on property that had cost $500, but was providing the foundation for a lifestyle that would have cost thousands of dollars per month to maintain in town. We had our own water supply, our own food production, our own sustainable energy systems, and our own sources of supplemental income. That made us far more financially secure than families with higher incomes but higher expenses. Elaine's vindication seemed complete when the COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated the value of self-sufficiency and rural living. While urban families struggled with job losses, supply chain disruptions, and social isolation, our family was largely insulated from the economic chaos because we had built systems that provided for our needs, independently of the larger economy. Our gardens provided fresh food when grocery stores were experiencing shortages. Our remote location provided safety and space when cities were experiencing lockdowns and social unrest. Our diverse income sources provided stability when traditional employers were laying off workers. Elaine's seemingly foolish decision to buy worthless swampland had created exactly the kind of security and independence that families throughout America were desperately seeking during the pandemic. But Elaine's greatest vindication was still ahead, hidden beneath 50 feet of Louisiana mud, waiting for the crisis that would force us to dig deeper than anyone had ever dug before. The geological treasure that would transform our family from rural homesteaders into multi-millionaires was patiently waiting for the moment when we would be desperate enough to look beyond the surface value of Elaine's incredible land purchase. The drainage problems that would lead to our life-changing discovery began during the record-breaking hurricane season of 2023, when 3 major storms swept through our region in less than 6 weeks. The unprecedented rainfall caused flooding that threatened to undermine the elevated pilings supporting our home, creating structural instability that could make our home uninhabitable within days. By August 2023, our family was facing the greatest crisis since Elaine's original decision to buy the property. Professional drainage engineering would cost at least $80,000 that we didn't have. Moving the cabin would require purchasing or renting different property that would end Elaine's dream of land ownership and financial independence. Doing nothing would mean watching our home collapse into the rising floodwaters while we scrambled to find alternative housing that we couldn't afford. Elaine made the decision that would change everything. Instead of trying to implement conventional drainage solutions, we would excavate a comprehensive underground drainage system beneath our existing home, creating a network of channels and retention basins that would protect our property from future flooding while solving the immediate structural problems that threatened our family stability. The project would require us to dig deeper than anyone had ever excavated on our property. But Elaine was convinced that we could complete the work ourselves using rental equipment and techniques that Daniel had learned during his hydrological career. What we discovered when we began digging that drainage system would prove that Elaine's intuition about our property's hidden value was even more accurate than she had dared to hope, and that her $500 investment would eventually be worth more than most people earn in several lifetimes. The devastating hurricane season of 2023 began like any other harsh season in the Gulf Coast, with early June storms and rainfall that increased steadily through July into the kind of relentless downpours that test every structure, every drainage system, and every family's ability to survive in one of America's most unforgiving climates. But what started as typical Louisiana weather quickly escalated into a perfect storm of catastrophic events that would threaten to destroy everything my family had spent 15 years building on Elaine's 15 acres of supposedly worthless swampland. The first sign of serious trouble came on July 3, 2023, when the main drainage channel around our elevated home collapsed during a torrential downpour that dumped 14 inches of rain in less than 24 hours. The ground had simply become too saturated to maintain its structure, creating a cascading failure that undermined the carefully designed water management system that had protected our home through previous hurricane seasons. When the waters finally receded in mid-July, we discovered that the collapse had created dangerous erosion around the pilings supporting our elevated cabin, leaving us with unstable ground that could give way during the next major storm. Emergency repairs to our drainage system cost $1,385 that we had to borrow from Daniel's former colleague, depleting our small emergency fund and leaving us financially vulnerable, just as other systems throughout our property began showing the strain of the unprecedented weather conditions. Our backup generator, which provided electricity during frequent power outages, suffered water damage during the first week of August when floodwaters rose higher than our protective berms for 6 consecutive days. The repair estimate of $940 represented nearly 2 weeks of income from Elaine's medicinal plant business. But the real crisis began on August 11th when Hurricane Francine made landfall just 70 miles from our property. The sound of rushing water woke us at 2:43 a.m., a roaring noise that Daniel immediately recognized as levee failure. By dawn, we could see that our entire property was transforming into a lake, with water rising toward the floor of our elevated cabin at an alarming rate. The home that had provided our family with stability and security for 11 years was suddenly sitting on pilings surrounded by swirling floodwaters that were actively eroding the ground beneath them. The structural posts began to tilt at dangerous angles as the soil around them washed away. The stairs leading to our front door collapsed completely, leaving us temporarily stranded until Daniel could construct a makeshift gangplank from our porch to higher ground. Most alarming, the water was rising faster than weather reports had predicted, suggesting that our property was experiencing localized drainage issues beyond the general flooding affecting our region. Daniel's hydrological expertise told him immediately that this wasn't a problem we could ignore or postpone until drier weather. Undermining of pilings in an elevated structure creates a cascade of structural problems that accelerate rapidly once they begin. Without immediate intervention, our home would collapse within days, leaving our family of 4 homeless during the height of hurricane season with no resources to secure alternative housing. The professional estimates we received for emergency drainage engineering ranged from $15,000 to $22,000, depending on whether we chose basic stabilization or complete hydrological redesign. The higher-end option would require bringing in specialized equipment, excavating a comprehensive drainage network, installing pumping systems, and reinforcing all structural supports, a process that would take several weeks during which our family would need temporary housing that we couldn't afford. Even the basic stabilization option was far beyond our financial capabilities. Our savings account contained exactly $927, accumulated through months of careful budgeting and sacrifice. Elaine's plant medicine business provided $1,400 per month, while Daniel's part-time consulting work generated between $1,100 and $1,800 per month, depending on available projects. Our total household income averaged less than $3,300 per month, leaving no margin for major unexpected expenses after covering basic necessities. The local bank manager, who had spent years reminding Elaine that her property couldn't serve as loan collateral because of its limited market value, confirmed that we didn't qualify for emergency home repair loans or any other conventional financing options. Our credit scores, while not terrible, weren't high enough for unsecured personal loans large enough to cover drainage engineering. The property that Elaine had purchased for $500 still carried an assessed value too low to support meaningful borrowing against our equity. Home insurance provided no relief because seasonal flooding problems were classified as maintenance issues rather than covered disasters. The extreme weather that had caused our drainage failure was considered normal Louisiana hurricane season conditions rather than an insurable catastrophe. We were entirely on our own with no financial safety net and no obvious solutions to a problem that threatened to destroy our family's housing security. Daniel's former colleague, who had helped with the earlier drainage repairs, made it clear that he couldn't provide additional financial assistance. His own budget was already stretched thin, and lending us over $1,300 for the previous repairs had depleted his emergency fund. Other family members lived too far away or faced their own financial challenges that made large loans impossible. The stress of our housing crisis was affecting every member of our family in different ways. Sophia, my 10-year-old sister, began having nightmares about our home floating away while we slept. I found myself constantly watching the water levels, calculating how many inches remained before it would reach our floorboards. Elaine and Daniel tried to maintain optimistic attitudes around us children, but we could see the strain in their faces and hear the whispered conversations about impossible choices and diminishing options. The weight of potentially losing our home was especially devastating for Elaine, who had sacrificed everything to achieve the land ownership and housing security that had been stolen from her by the hurricane that killed her dreams of college. The possibility of losing our home felt like watching Elaine's 15-year journey from poverty to independence unravel in a matter of days. Everything she had worked for, the self-sufficiency, the stability, the proof that unconventional approaches could create lasting security, was threatened by a hydrological problem that we lacked the resources to solve through normal means. Local engineers confirmed what Daniel already knew about bayou drainage problems. Temporary fixes wouldn't solve the underlying issue, and without proper engineering, the structural damage would continue accelerating until our home became completely uninhabitable. We had perhaps 10 days before the foundation failure would force us to evacuate, and no realistic prospects for securing the financing needed for professional repairs. The cruel irony of our situation wasn't lost on anyone in our family. Here we were living on property that provided food security, botanical medicine, sustainable income, and a lifestyle that many urban families envied, but facing homelessness because of a mechanical problem that required cash resources we didn't possess. Our wealth in terms of land, skills, and self-sufficiency meant nothing when confronted with a crisis that demanded immediate financial solutions. Elaine spent hours researching alternative approaches to drainage problems, studying online resources, consulting with experienced hydrologists, and exploring every possible way to address our crisis without spending money we didn't have. She investigated do-it-yourself drainage systems, temporary stabilization methods, and emergency housing alternatives that might buy us time to develop long-term solutions. The research process revealed that our specific combination of soil conditions, watershed patterns, and geological features created challenges that were particularly difficult to address through conventional approaches. The clay-heavy soil around our home retained moisture that contributed to erosion problems. The unusual underground water patterns in our area created pressure systems that stressed drainage materials beyond their design limits. The elevated construction of our home made it particularly vulnerable to foundation movement. But Elaine's research also revealed possibilities that professional engineers hadn't mentioned, perhaps because they involved approaches that went far beyond typical repair work. Instead of simply fixing the damaged drainage system, we could excavate a comprehensive underground network beneath our entire property, creating a sustainable water management system while solving the flooding problems permanently. The project would be complex and labor-intensive, but it wouldn't require the specialized materials and professional expertise that made conventional repairs so expensive. Excavating a drainage network would allow us to control water flow well below the surface, eliminating future problems with flooding cycles. The system would provide storm protection, create reservoirs for dry season irrigation, and potentially reveal more about the unusual geological formations that Elaine had noted when she first purchased the property. Most importantly, we could complete the work ourselves using rented equipment and techniques that Daniel had learned during his years in hydrology. The drainage excavation approach would still require significant expenses for equipment rental, piping materials, and structural reinforcement, but the total cost would be spread over several months rather than due immediately. We could rent excavation equipment for short periods, complete sections of the work incrementally, and purchase materials as our budget allowed rather than financing the entire project at once. Elaine's proposal to dig our own drainage system seemed ambitious, to the point of impossibility. None of us had experience with major excavation projects, and the technical challenges of working around existing structures while maintaining structural stability for an occupied home were formidable. The decision to attempt the drainage excavation represented a huge gamble for our family. If we succeeded, we would solve our housing crisis while creating a sustainable water management system that would improve our property's value for decades. If we failed, we might damage our home beyond repair, destabilize the ground further, or create flooding hazards that would force us to evacuate even sooner than the original drainage problems would have required. Elaine made the final decision. During a family meeting on August 15, 2023, she reminded us that our family had always succeeded through approaches that others considered impossible or impractical. Her original decision to buy 15 acres of worthless swampland had seemed equally risky, but it had provided the foundation for 15 years of stability and independence. The drainage excavation was simply the next step in our family's tradition of creating solutions through determination rather than depending on systems that had already failed us. The equipment rental would cost $390 per day for the mini excavator and $210 per day for the specialized drainage equipment. We planned to rent the machinery for 3 separate weekends, completing different phases of the excavation during each rental period. The piping materials would cost approximately $2,800, purchased in stages as we progressed through different aspects of the construction. Total project cost would approach $5,000, but spread over 3 months rather than due immediately. Elaine arranged to increase production of her medicinal preparations, while Daniel committed to taking every consulting job offered during the fall season, regardless of how small or inconvenient. Sophia and I would contribute by handling all the hand digging, material moving, and cleanup work that didn't require heavy machinery. Our entire family would dedicate every available hour to the drainage project until it was completed. The first equipment rental was scheduled for August 19th, giving us 4 days to complete preparatory work, finalize our excavation plan, and gather the tools and materials needed for the initial phase of digging. Elaine spent those 4 days in a state of nervous excitement, oscillating between confidence that we were about to solve our housing crisis and anxiety that we were about to destroy the only home our family had ever owned. But first, we had to survive the next several months of backbreaking labor, technical challenges, and constant uncertainty about whether our ambitious plan would save our home or destroy it. The excavation project that would change our lives forever was about to begin, and none of us could have imagined what we were about to discover buried beneath the Louisiana mud that everyone else had written off as completely worthless. To truly understand how Elaine's seemingly foolish $500 land purchase would eventually lead to the discovery of a $220 million diamond deposit, you need to understand the extraordinary circumstances that brought the original settler to our 15 acres of Louisiana swampland and why he made construction choices that would prove crucial to protecting an underground fortune for over 150 years. The story of our property begins not with Elaine's desperate gamble in 2008, but with another desperate gamble made by Captain Frederick Wellington Caldwell in 1873 during the tumultuous Reconstruction era. Caldwell was a former British geological engineer who had traveled extensively through Africa's diamond fields before coming to America to seek new opportunities after the Civil War. Frederick Caldwell arrived in Louisiana in the spring of 1872. Following rumors of unusual mineral formations in the Cypress Parish bayous that had been uncovered during post-war drainage projects. Unlike most prospectors who focused on easily accessible deposits, Caldwell's engineering background had taught him to recognize geological anomalies that indicated deeper, more substantial mineral veins that required systematic excavation rather than surface exploration. Caldwell spent his first Louisiana winter in the rough trading post of Bayou Noir, studying the geological patterns of the region while developing theories about unusual formations that had been overlooked by local residents who lacked technical training in geology and engineering. His international experience with diamond mining had taught him that the most valuable resources were often buried far deeper than casual exploration could reveal. The specific parcel that would eventually become Elaine's property caught Caldwell's attention because of its unique geological features and strategic location relative to ancient river formations throughout the Cypress Parish region. The swampy terrain contained exposed rock formations that showed clear evidence of kimberlite pipes, the rare volcanic formations that sometimes contain diamonds, but the surface deposits were too scattered and waterlogged to attract conventional prospecting efforts. Caldwell recognized that the scattered surface formations were probably indicators of a substantial underground diamond pipe that would require sophisticated drainage and deep shaft mining to access profitably. The property's location at the intersection of two ancient waterways provided the geological conditions essential for diamond formation, while its elevation offered some protection from the worst seasonal flooding that had destroyed several settlements in lower-lying areas. Most importantly, Caldwell understood that successful diamond mining in Louisiana required not just finding deposits, but developing the infrastructure to extract and process them discreetly. The property's dense vegetation could conceal mining operations from potential claim jumpers, while its remote location would enable processing without attracting unwanted attention from authorities or competitors. Caldwell filed his land claim on 180 acres that included our current 15-acre parcel in February 1873, beginning construction of what he intended to be America's first profitable diamond mining operation. His engineering experience enabled him to design excavation and processing systems far more advanced than anything previously attempted in the Louisiana bayous. The mining operation that Caldwell established differed from conventional approaches in fundamental ways that reflected his international expertise and engineering background. Instead of focusing on quick extraction of easily accessible surface deposits, Caldwell developed a comprehensive plan for systematic exploration and development that could support decades of profitable mining from deep underground formations. Caldwell's first major construction project was the excavation of an exploratory shaft that would reveal the extent and quality of diamond deposits throughout his property. The shaft location was carefully selected based on geological surveys that indicated the highest probability of encountering substantial diamond-bearing kimberlite at manageable depths. The excavation techniques he employed were based on African mining principles that emphasize safety, water management, and long-term durability. The exploratory shaft that Caldwell sank during the summer of 1873 exceeded his most optimistic expectations. At a depth of 42 feet, his excavation encountered what geological surveys would later describe as one of the richest diamond-bearing kimberlite pipes ever discovered in North America. The formation extended in multiple directions from the main shaft, indicating an underground deposit of extraordinary size and value. Caldwell's international experience had taught him the importance of security when dealing with valuable resources that could attract claim jumpers, thieves, and unwanted government attention. The diamond deposit he had discovered was so rich and extensive that news of its existence would certainly attract dangerous elements that could jeopardize his ability to develop the claim safely and profitably. Instead of immediately beginning large-scale extraction that would reveal the extent of his discovery, Caldwell made the strategic decision to expand his exploratory excavation into a concealed underground mining complex that could operate without attracting attention from competing prospectors or potential thieves. His engineering experience provided the expertise needed to create sophisticated concealment and water management systems. The underground complex that Caldwell constructed during 1873 and 1874 represented the most advanced mining engineering ever attempted in Louisiana. The system included multiple access shafts, extensive underground chambers for diamond processing and storage, sophisticated drainage systems, and security measures that could protect the operation from discovery or attack by hostile forces. Caldwell's concealment strategy was based on engineering principles of camouflage and water management that made his mining operation nearly invisible from surface observations. The main access points were disguised as cypress stumps and natural sinkholes. The processing areas were located entirely underground to eliminate noise, light, and other indicators that would reveal mining activity to casual observers. The underground chambers that Caldwell excavated were designed not just for immediate mining needs, but for long-term diamond storage and processing that could continue operating even during periods of external threats or severe flooding. Chambers included sophisticated drainage systems that prevented water intrusion, ventilation systems that maintained air quality, and structural supports that could withstand cave-ins or other geological instabilities. Caldwell's mining operation proved extraordinarily profitable during its first 3 years of production. The diamonds he extracted were so high in quality that even small-scale processing generated enough revenue to fund continued expansion of his underground complex while providing substantial profits that he invested in additional mining equipment and security measures. But Caldwell's success also attracted exactly the kind of unwanted attention he had tried to avoid through his concealment strategies. By 1876, rumors of his exceptional diamond quality had spread throughout Louisiana's criminal underworld, attracting dangerous elements who began exploring areas around his property, looking for similar deposits. More ominously, corrupt reconstruction. Officials had begun targeting successful operations throughout the region for special taxation that amounted to legalized extortion. The specific threat that ended Caldwell's mining career came from the Bayou Noir gang, a group of violent criminals who had been systematically attacking isolated homesteads throughout Cyprus Parish during 1876. The gang's strategy involved forcing legitimate landowners off their property through intimidation and violence. than operating any valuable enterprises themselves until they were exhausted or law enforcement intervention became unavoidable. In October 1876, the Bayou gang demanded that Caldwell abandon his property and mining operation, threatening to kill him and destroy his property if he refused to comply. Caldwell's international experience had taught him that fighting against organized criminals with political protection was rarely successful, especially when protecting a fixed position that enemies could attack at times and places of their choosing. Faced with the choice between abandoning his valuable mining operation or risking death in a conflict he was unlikely to survive, Caldwell made a decision that reflected both his practical nature and his engineering expertise. Instead of simply fleeing and allowing the gang to discover and loot his underground complex, he would conceal the entire mining operation so thoroughly that even extensive searching would fail to reveal its existence. The concealment project that Caldwell undertook during November and December 1876 represented the most sophisticated camouflage operation ever attempted in Louisiana. Using techniques developed for international mining applications, Caldwell sealed and disguised his underground mining complex so completely that no surface evidence remained to indicate its existence. The main access shafts were filled with carefully arranged cypress logs and soil that appeared to be natural bayou formations. The underground chambers were sealed with stone and timber supports designed to prevent collapse while making excavation from above extremely difficult and time-consuming. The entire site was landscaped to appear as undisturbed swampland that had never been developed for mining or any other purpose. Caldwell's most ingenious concealment technique involved creating false geological indicators that would mislead future prospectors who might investigate his property. He planted low-grade mineral samples and pyrite deposits in areas that would attract attention away from his actual mining sites, while carefully removing all traces of the high-quality diamonds that indicated the true extent of his underground treasure. The final phase of Caldwell's concealment project involved creating detailed maps and documentation that would allow him to relocate and reopen his mining operation if he ever returned to Louisiana. The maps were encoded using sophisticated cipher techniques that made them meaningless to anyone who lacked the specific keys needed for translation. The documentation was hidden in multiple secure locations throughout his property. Caldwell completed his concealment work in early January 1877, transforming his sophisticated mining operation into apparently worthless swampland that showed no evidence of valuable mineral deposits or previous development. The underground complex that contained millions of dollars worth of diamonds and mining equipment was sealed beneath soil and cypress logs that would discourage casual investigation. In mid-January 1877, Caldwell abandoned his Louisiana property and disappeared from regional records, leaving behind no indication of his destination or intentions. Local residents assumed he'd been driven off by the Bayou gang, like several other landowners who had abandoned their claims during the same period. The property reverted to state control and was eventually made available for homesteading by other settlers. The Bayou gang spent several weeks searching Caldwell's abandoned property for evidence of the mining operation that had generated rumors of exceptional diamond quality. Their searches revealed nothing more valuable than the scattered surface minerals and fool's gold samples that Caldwell had planted as decoys. After finding no evidence of significant mineral wealth, the gang concluded that Caldwell's reputation had been exaggerated and moved on to more promising targets. Over the following decades, Caldwell's property was claimed and abandoned by multiple owners who attempted to develop it for agricultural or residential use without success. The soil conditions that had been created by Caldwell's mining activities made conventional development difficult, while the scattered low-grade mineral samples discouraged serious prospecting efforts. Each failed development attempt further established the property's reputation as worthless land that was unsuitable for any productive use. The property records from 1878 through 1950 show a consistent pattern of short-term ownership followed by abandonment, with each new owner apparently unaware of the previous mining activity or the possibility that substantial mineral wealth might remain hidden beneath the surface. The concealment techniques that Caldwell had developed proved so effective that even determined searching failed to reveal evidence of the underground complex. By 1970, Caldwell's property had been abandoned for so long that parish records classified it as wetland, unsuitable for development, mineral potential unknown, no structures or improvements. The assessment reflected the complete success of Caldwell's concealment project. His sophisticated mining operation had been so thoroughly hidden that its very existence had been forgotten. The underground complex that Caldwell had sealed in 1877 remained intact throughout the decades of surface abandonment, protected by the same geological conditions that had originally made the site attractive for mining. The natural drainage patterns prevented water accumulation that could damage stored diamonds or mining equipment. The stable clay conditions prevented collapses or other structural failures that could destroy the concealed chambers. Most importantly, the underground environment provided perfect preservation conditions for the diamonds that Caldwell had stored pending future extraction. Unlike surface deposits that could be degraded by weather exposure, the concealed diamonds remained in pristine condition, increasing in value as diamond prices rose throughout the 20th century. The documentation that Caldwell had hidden throughout his property also remained intact, though its cipher encoding made it meaningless to the occasional treasure hunters or mineral rights speculators who discovered fragments over the years. Without the specific translation keys that Caldwell had taken with him, the maps and technical documents appeared to be worthless papers left behind by an unsuccessful prospector. When Elaine purchased the property in 2008, she was unknowingly acquiring not just 15 acres of worthless swampland, but also ownership of one of Louisiana's most valuable undiscovered diamond deposits, protected by concealment systems that had successfully hidden its existence for over 130 years. The unusual rock formations that had attracted her attention during her original property inspection were actually high-grade kimberlite that Caldwell had missed during his concealment project. The natural spring that Elaine valued for its clean water was actually part of the drainage system that had kept Caldwell's underground complex dry and structurally stable for more than a century. The areas of unusual firmness that made traditional development difficult were actually the disguised access points to underground chambers containing millions of dollars worth of diamonds and historical mining equipment. The flooding problems that had forced our family to undertake emergency drainage excavation would soon reveal that Elaine's intuition about her property's hidden value was more accurate than even she had imagined. The drainage project that we were beginning out of desperate necessity would eventually break through into Caldwell's concealed underground complex, revealing treasures that had been waiting 147 years for someone determined enough to dig deeper than anyone had dared to dig before. Frederick Caldwell's engineering expertise and strategic concealment project had created the perfect conditions for preserving extraordinary mineral wealth until the moment when another desperate gambler would be forced by circumstances to excavate deeper than anyone had dared to dig before. The drainage crisis that threatened our family security was actually the key that would unlock secrets worth more than most families could spend in several lifetimes. But first, Elaine's intuition and our family's determination would have to overcome 147 years of accumulated doubt about property that everyone knew was worthless. The treasure that Caldwell had hidden so carefully was about to be discovered by people who understood that sometimes the most valuable things in life are buried in the places that everyone else has given up on as hopeless. While Frederick Caldwell's perfectly concealed mining operation lay hidden beneath Louisiana mud, Waiting for someone desperate enough to dig deeper than conventional wisdom suggested was worthwhile. The surface of our property was about to experience its own dramatic transformation through a series of failed development attempts that would unknowingly add additional layers of protection to the underground treasure that would one day save our family from financial ruin. The first serious attempt to develop Caldwell's abandoned property came in 1902 when French immigrant Marie-Claire Fontenot claimed the 180-acre parcel as part of Louisiana's continued efforts to encourage settlement throughout its wetland regions. Marie-Claire arrived in Cypress Parish with her 5 children and the kind of fierce determination that characterized French Acadian immigrants who had succeeded in transforming Louisiana's challenging environment into productive communities. Marie-Claire Fontenot's background included extensive experience with the challenging conditions that characterized Cajun agricultural traditions where seasonal flooding, poor drainage, and extreme weather had taught generations of farmers to develop innovative techniques for creating productivity in environments that seemed hostile to conventional agriculture. Her family had farmed similar wetlands in the Atchafalaya Basin for decades, accumulating knowledge about water management, crop selection, and sustainable harvesting that could potentially succeed even in our property's challenging conditions. The homestead that Marie-Claire claimed included our current 15-acre parcel, plus an additional 165 acres of similar terrain that offered slightly better agricultural potential, but still presented formidable challenges for successful development. Previous owners had attempted to improve portions of this land during the 1880s and 1890s, but all had abandoned their efforts within a few seasons, defeated by drainage conditions that seemed to prevent normal crop production and residential construction. Marie-Claire's agricultural expertise enabled her to recognize immediately that the water problems plaguing our property weren't caused entirely by natural conditions, but by human activity that had altered the land's normal hydrological patterns. The unusual drainage issues that prevented conventional farming showed clear evidence of excavation and backfilling that had mixed subsoil with surface layers, creating growing conditions that were hostile to most crop varieties. But Marie-Claire also recognized that the same unusual conditions that made conventional farming difficult might create opportunities for specialized agricultural approaches that could take advantage of unique soil chemistry rather than fighting against it. Her Cajun farming background had included experience with mineral-rich soils that require different techniques but could produce exceptional crops when managed properly. The devastating Louisiana summer of 2023 dawned clear and hot. The kind of oppressive heat that made even the most routine outdoor work feel like an impossible challenge. But for our family, this was the day that would either save our home or destroy it completely. As Daniel fired up the rented mini excavator and I helped Sophia organize our hand tools for the drainage project, none of us could have imagined that we were about to break through 147 years of carefully constructed concealment into one of the richest diamond deposits ever discovered on private land in North America. Our excavation plan called for creating a network of drainage channels in carefully measured sections, beginning with the area furthest from our home's main support pillars and working systematically toward the center where we would eventually install the main drainage basin that would solve our flooding problems permanently. Daniel's hydrological expertise had taught him that drainage excavation beneath an occupied structure required meticulous attention to soil removal patterns that maintained stability while creating the network needed for effective water management. The first day of digging proceeded exactly as Daniel had anticipated, with the excavator bucket efficiently removing the topsoil and subsoil layers that Marie-Claire Fontenot had mixed during her agricultural terracing projects a century earlier. The soil composition was exactly what Elaine remembered from her gardening work in 2008: clay-heavy, mineral-rich earth that was difficult to work with, but had somehow supported 15 years of successful medicinal plant production and modest agricultural income. But as the excavator bucket reached depths of 14 to 18 feet, we began encountering the same mysterious voids and unusual formations that had puzzled Marie Claire during her water management projects. Several times, the excavator would break through into open spaces that seemed too regular and structured to be natural formations, but too deeply buried and well concealed to be obvious signs of human construction. Daniel's hydrological experience included enough geological projects to recognize that the underground cavities we were encountering showed clear evidence of deliberate engineering rather than natural processes. The voids were lined with worked stone and timber supports that had remained structurally sound despite more than 100 years of Louisiana's humidity and seasonal flooding. On the second day of excavation, as we worked deeper into the area that would become our drainage basin's northwest corner, Elaine noticed something gleaming in the excavator bucket that looked different from the usual mineral deposits that had attracted her attention during her original property inspection in 2008. The gleaming material was more concentrated, more crystalline, and embedded in kimberlite formations that suggested genuine geological diamond deposits rather than scattered surface traces. Elaine's instinct for recognizing valuable minerals developed. During her environmental science courses, told her immediately that what we were seeing in the excavation bucket wasn't quartz or other common crystals that frequently appeared in Louisiana soil. The clarity, the hardness, the way it reflected light, everything indicated that we were encountering actual diamond-bearing kimberlite of exceptional purity and concentration. The breakthrough moment came on August 21st, our third full day of excavation, when the excavator bucket punched through what we initially assumed was another natural cavity, but which proved to be the deliberately sealed entrance to Frederick Caldwell's concealed mining complex. The sound of the breakthrough was distinctly different from breaking through natural rock or soil. It was the sound of carefully engineered construction giving way after 147 years of perfect preservation. Daniel immediately shut down the excavator and called for our entire family to examine what we had uncovered. The opening revealed by the excavator bucket was clearly artificial, a stone-lined shaft that descended into darkness with timber supports. That showed the kind of precision construction that could only have been created by someone with professional engineering expertise. Daniel was the first to descend into the opening, using a flashlight and rope safety system that he improvised from our construction supplies. What he discovered in that first underground chamber exceeded even Elaine's most optimistic theories about our property's hidden mineral potential. The chamber walls were lined with diamond-bearing kimberlite veins so rich and extensive that they gleamed like stars in the flashlight beam, and the chamber floor was covered with processed diamond ore that Caldwell had extracted and stored, pending future transportation to processing facilities. The first chamber was just the beginning of discoveries that would occupy our family for weeks of careful exploration and documentation. Caldwell's underground complex included 9 separate chambers, connected by engineered tunnels with sophisticated drainage systems that had maintained dry conditions for nearly 150 years and a well-designed ventilation network that had preserved air quality throughout the complex. Each chamber served different functions in what had clearly been a major mining operation designed for long-term, large-scale diamond extraction and processing. The main storage chamber contained approximately 743 pounds of processed diamond-bearing, or that geological surveys would later value at over $47 million at current diamond prices. But the processed ore represented only a fraction of the mineral wealth that Caldwell's mining operation had identified throughout our property. The chamber walls themselves contained diamond-bearing veins that extended far beyond the areas that Caldwell had been able to excavate before being forced to abandon his operation. The documentation chamber proved equally valuable in its own way, containing Caldwell's mining records, geological surveys, and operational plans that provided detailed maps of diamond deposits throughout our entire 15-acre parcel and the surrounding areas. The documents revealed that Caldwell had identified diamond deposits with an estimated $220 million in current values, distributed through underground formations that extended well beyond the areas he had been able to develop before the bayou. Noir gang forced him to abandon his work. Most remarkably, Caldwell's engineering expertise had created preservation conditions so perfect that his mining equipment, processing tools, and even paper documents remained in excellent condition despite 147 years of underground storage. The dry, stable environment that his ventilation and drainage systems had maintained proved ideal for preserving both mineral assets and historical artifacts that documented one of Louisiana's most significant but previously unknown diamond mining operations. The discovery of Caldwell's concealed mining complex answered every question about the mysterious features that had puzzled property owners for over a century. The scattered surface minerals that had attracted Elaine's attention were traces of kimberlite that Caldwell had spilled during his concealment project. The unusual drainage conditions that had frustrated development were caused by backfill from his mining excavations. The underground voids that Marie Claire had encountered during her water management construction were access tunnels to chambers that she had missed by mere feet. But understanding the historical significance of our discovery was less immediately pressing than addressing the legal and practical challenges of claiming ownership of mineral assets that had been hidden for 147 years on property that had changed hands multiple times during the intervening decades. Louisiana mineral rights laws are complex, and we needed expert legal advice to determine our family's rights to treasure discovered on property that Elaine owned, but that had been developed by someone else over a century earlier. The legal consultation process revealed that Louisiana treasure laws strongly favored property owners who discovered mineral assets through legitimate excavation on their own land. Caldwell's abandonment of his mining operation without filing appropriate claims had effectively forfeited his rights to the mineral assets, making them the property of whoever owned the surface rights when they were discovered. Elaine's clear title to our 15-acre parcel gave our family unambiguous legal ownership of everything we had found in Caldwell's concealed chambers. Professional geological surveys commissioned to evaluate the full extent of our discovery confirmed that Caldwell's original assessments had been remarkably accurate. The diamond deposits that he had identified extended throughout our property in formations that would support profitable mining for decades, with total estimated values approaching $220 million based on current diamond prices and extraction technologies. The immediate financial impact of our discovery was overwhelming in ways that our family needed months to fully comprehend. The processed diamonds from Caldwell's storage chambers provided liquid assets worth over $47 million that could be sold immediately to address our flooding crisis and establish long-term financial security. The remaining mineral deposits represented wealth that could support our family for generations, while funding conservation and educational projects that would honor both Caldwell's engineering genius and Elaine's vision of sustainable land use. Elaine's decision about how to develop our mineral assets reflected the same long-term thinking and environmental stewardship that had guided her botanical innovations for 15 years. Instead of pursuing maximum short-term extraction that could damage the land and destroy the natural beauty that made our property valuable, she developed a conservative mining plan that would preserve environmental quality while providing sustainable income for decades. The mining operation that Elaine established in partnership with environmental engineering consultants from Louisiana State University represented a new model for responsible mineral extraction that balanced economic development with conservation goals. The extraction techniques were designed to minimize environmental impact while providing educational opportunities for students studying sustainable mining and wetland preservation. The financial security that our diamond discovery provided enabled Elaine to establish the Frederick Caldwell Foundation, honoring the engineering genius whose concealment project had preserved our family's salvation for 147 years. The foundation provides scholarships for students studying environmental engineering and supports research into sustainable mining techniques that can provide economic development without wetland destruction. Our property also became the site of Louisiana's first sustainable mining educational center, where students and professionals can study innovative extraction techniques that minimize environmental impact while maximizing resource recovery. The center uses Caldwell's original mining complex as a historical showcase while demonstrating modern technologies that can make mineral extraction compatible with conservation goals. The underground chambers that had hidden our treasure for nearly 150 years were preserved as historical landmarks that document Louisiana's forgotten mining heritage, while providing unique educational experiences for visitors interested in understanding the engineering challenges and social dynamics that characterized Reconstruction-era mineral exploration. Caldwell's perfectly preserved mining complex offers insights into 19th-century engineering techniques that are valuable for both historical research and modern conservation applications. But the most important transformation that our discovery created wasn't financial. It was the vindication of Elaine's 15-year faith that unconventional approaches and persistent determination could create opportunities that conventional wisdom insisted were impossible. The worthless swampland that everyone had mocked as Elaine's foolish investment proved to contain wealth that exceeded the wildest dreams of families who had pursued conventional paths to financial security. The drainage system that we had been excavating out of desperate necessity became the foundation for a comprehensive water management network that Elaine designed to showcase sustainable living techniques while providing effective flood protection for our family and neighboring properties. The new home we built incorporates raised construction, natural water filtration systems, and renewable energy technologies that demonstrate environmental stewardship while providing comfortable accommodation for our family and educational program participants. The house incorporates geothermal cooling, solar energy systems, and rainwater harvesting technologies that demonstrate the possibilities of sustainable bayou living while providing luxury amenities that reflect our transformed financial circumstances. Sophia and I grew up understanding that we were the beneficiaries of both Caldwell's engineering genius and Elaine's stubborn refusal to accept other people's limitations about what was possible for a family with more determination than money. Our education included not just conventional academic subjects, but also hands-on training in geology, hydrology, environmental science, and sustainable development that prepared us to continue the legacy of innovation and stewardship that had brought our family from poverty to prosperity. As I stand today beside the restored entrance to Caldwell's mining complex, watching new groups of students explore the underground chambers that changed our family's destiny, I understand that the real treasure wasn't the diamonds we discovered beneath our feet. The real treasure was learning that sometimes the most valuable things in life are hidden in places that everyone else has written off as hopeless, waiting for people who are desperate enough and determined enough to dig deeper than conventional wisdom suggests is practical or worthwhile. Elaine's $500 gamble on 15 acres of worthless Louisiana swampland proved that faith in possibilities combined with a willingness to work toward long-term goals that others consider unrealistic can create wealth that exceeds any lottery jackpot or inheritance. The diamonds that we discovered were less important than the knowledge that conventional limitations often represent failures of imagination rather than actual boundaries of what can be achieved. The Mitchell family's story proved that environmental stewardship and economic success aren't just compatible, they're mutually reinforcing approaches that create lasting value for families and communities. The sustainable mining operation that Elaine developed generates substantial income while enhancing rather than degrading the natural resources that will continue providing value for generations yet to come. The flooding problems that had threatened to destroy our family's housing security, became the catalyst for discoveries that ensured we would never again face financial uncertainty or housing instability. The crisis that could have made us homeless instead made us wealthy beyond anything we had ever imagined possible, while teaching us that the greatest security comes from understanding that determined people can create solutions when everyone else sees only problems. Frederick Caldwell's engineering expertise had created the perfect conditions for preserving extraordinary mineral wealth until the moment when another determined innovator would be forced by circumstances to excavate deeper than anyone had dared to dig before. Elaine's intuition and our family's determination had provided the persistence necessary to discover secrets that had been waiting 147 years for people who refused to accept defeat when everyone else advised surrender. The worthless property that had been the source of community mockery and family ridicule for 15 years proved to be worth more than most people earn in several lifetimes, while teaching us the most valuable lesson of all, sometimes the greatest. Treasures are hidden directly beneath the places that everyone else has given up on as completely hopeless and beyond redemption. Our discovery of Frederick Caldwell's hidden diamond mine transformed not just our family's financial situation, but our entire understanding of what's possible when you refuse to accept conventional limitations. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of geological surveys, legal consultations, and security measures to protect both our newfound treasure and our privacy from the media frenzy that would inevitably follow once news of our discovery became public. The first priority was addressing the immediate flooding crisis that had initiated our desperate drainage project. With access to immediate funds from the initial diamond evaluation, we hired the region's top hydrological engineering firm to implement a comprehensive water management system that would permanently protect our property from even the most severe flooding events. The engineering team was initially skeptical about our property's potential, having heard for years about its worthless reputation. Their attitude changed dramatically when they saw Caldwell's underground complex and realized they were working on what would soon become one of the most famous pieces of land in Louisiana. The senior engineer, Dr. Caroline Leon, was so impressed by Caldwell's 19th century drainage designs that she incorporated several of his innovative approaches into the modern system. What's remarkable, Dr. Leon explained during installation, is that Caldwell's drainage principles were at least 75 years ahead of their time. The channeling system he designed would be considered advanced even by today's standards. He understood water flow dynamics that weren't formally documented until the 1940s. The new drainage network was completed in just 6 weeks, transforming our property from flood-prone swampland into a hydrologically stable environment that could withstand even Category 5 hurricane conditions. The system incorporated natural filtration elements that actually improved water quality in the surrounding wetlands, turning what had been our greatest liability into a showcase of environmental engineering. Our second priority was determining exactly what we had discovered and its true value. The Louisiana State University Department of Geology sent a team of specialists who spent 3 months carefully mapping, testing, and documenting every aspect of Caldwell's mining complex and the diamond deposits it contained. Professor Martin Thibodeau, the state's leading expert on geological formations, was visibly moved when he first examined the main diamond chamber. In 38 years of geological fieldwork, "I've never seen anything like this," he admitted, carefully examining a particularly clear specimen. These diamonds are not only exceptional in quality, but the deposit itself represents a formation type previously unknown in North America. Caldwell didn't just find diamonds, he discovered an entirely new geological pattern. The comprehensive evaluation confirmed our initial estimates and exceeded them. The diamond deposits throughout our property were valued at approximately $220 million, with the possibility of additional formations extending beyond our property boundaries. The quality of the stones was exceptional, with many qualifying as investment-grade gems that would command premium prices in international markets. Beyond the raw financial value, the discovery had immense historical significance. Caldwell's meticulous documentation provided insights into Reconstruction-era Louisiana that had been missing from historical records. His journals detailed not just mining operations but social conditions, economic challenges, and environmental observations that offered historians a unique window into a turbulent period of American history. The State Historical Society petitioned for Caldwell's documentation to be preserved and made available for academic research. Elaine agreed on the condition that original materials remain on our property in a purpose-built research facility that would become part of the educational center she envisioned. As we navigated the complex legal landscape surrounding our discovery, we faced unexpected challenges from distant relatives of Frederick Caldwell, who emerged claiming inheritance rights to the diamonds. The case attracted national attention, with legal experts debating the intersection of abandoned property law, mineral rights, and inheritance claims spanning nearly 150 years. The breakthrough came when our legal team discovered Caldwell's final will and testament hidden within a false bottom in his personal chest in the documentation chamber. The document explicitly stated that in the event of his death or disappearance, all mining assets should pass to whoever demonstrates the vision and determination to discover what I have so carefully concealed. The Louisiana Supreme Court ultimately ruled unanimously in our favor, establishing what became known as the Caldwell Doctrine. In property law, the principle that deliberately concealed assets abandoned for over a century become the property of whoever discovers them through legitimate activity on legally owned land. With legal challenges resolved and security measures in place, we faced the most important decision of all: how to use this extraordinary windfall in ways that would honor both Caldwell's ingenuity and Elaine's commitment to sustainable development. We have an opportunity that comes to perhaps one family in a generation, Elaine explained during a family meeting where we discussed our options. We can use these resources to create something meaningful that extends far beyond our own comfort or security. This isn't just about becoming wealthy, it's about becoming responsible stewards of something remarkable. Elaine's vision for our property went far beyond simple mineral extraction. She proposed creating an integrated center for sustainable development, environmental education, and historical preservation that would transform our once worthless swampland into a model for responsible resource management. The Mitchell Center for Sustainable Development broke ground in January 2024. Designed by award-winning architect Gabriela Montez, who specialized in environmentally integrated structures. The center incorporated Caldwell's original mining complex as its foundation, with modern facilities built around and above the historical structures in ways that preserve their integrity while creating functional spaces for education and research. The center included state-of-the-art diamond processing facilities that employed local residents, many of whom had previously struggled to find stable employment in our economically depressed parish. The operation implemented extraction methods that minimized environmental impact while maximizing recovery rates, setting new standards for the mining industry. What we're doing here challenges the false dichotomy between economic development and environmental protection, Daniel explained to a group of visiting engineering students. Our approach proves that with proper planning and genuine commitment, resource extraction can actually enhance rather than damage the surrounding ecosystem. The educational component of the center offered programs ranging from elementary school field trips to postdoctoral research opportunities. Students could explore everything from wetland ecology to sustainable mining practices, with hands-on experiences that connected theoretical knowledge to practical applications. Sophia and I became deeply involved in the educational programs, drawing on our unique experience as children who had grown up on worthless land that proved to contain extraordinary value. We developed a curriculum specifically for young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, emphasizing that conventional assessments of worth, whether of land, ideas, or people, often miss the true potential that lies beneath the surface. The most important lesson from our experience, I told a group of high school students from a struggling New Orleans neighborhood, isn't about finding diamonds. It's about questioning limitations that others place on your possibilities. When everyone told my mother her land was worthless, she saw potential they couldn't imagine. That same principle applies to your own lives and communities. The historical preservation aspect of the center became unexpectedly significant when further exploration of Caldwell's documentation revealed connections to the Underground Railroad. His journals indicated that the mining complex had occasionally served as a safe house for formerly enslaved people traveling north during the chaotic post-Civil War period, adding another layer of historical importance to our property. This discovery led to collaboration with the National Museum of African American History, which helped develop exhibits contextualizing Caldwell's mining operation within the broader social dynamics of Reconstruction-era Louisiana. These exhibits attracted historians, students, and tourists who might never have been interested in geological or environmental education, broadening the center's impact. The financial security provided by our diamond discovery allowed our family to support numerous community initiatives throughout Cypress Parish. Elaine established a foundation that provided microloans to local entrepreneurs, particularly those focused on sustainable businesses that could thrive in harmony with the region's unique ecosystem. One of the foundation's most successful initiatives was the Bayou Women's Cooperative, which supported single mothers developing businesses based on traditional Cajun crafts, herbal medicines, and culinary arts. The program was inspired by Elaine's own journey and the challenges she had faced as a single mother, trying to create stability through unconventional approaches. When I moved here with nothing but determination and a piece of worthless land, the hardest part wasn't the physical work or even the financial struggle, Elaine told the cooperative's first graduating class. It was fighting against the constant chorus of voices saying what I was attempting was impossible. This program exists to be the voice that says yes when everyone else is saying no. The ecological impact of our development extended far beyond our property boundaries. The water management system we implemented became a model for regional flood control, with elements adopted by neighboring communities and eventually incorporated into parish-wide resilience planning. Louisiana State University established a permanent research station on the northern edge of our property to study the long-term effects of our integrated approach to development. Preliminary findings indicated that biodiversity was actually increasing in areas surrounding our controlled mining operations, as the careful water management created more stable habitats than had previously existed in the flood-prone region. What the Mitchell family has achieved here represents a paradigm shift in how we think about resource extraction in sensitive environments, noted Dr. Janelle Washington, the lead environmental researcher. They've demonstrated that, with proper engineering and genuine commitment to sustainability, human development and ecological health can be mutually reinforcing rather than inherently opposed. Our family's transformation from struggling homesteaders to multi-millionaires inevitably attracted media attention, with television crews, documentary filmmakers, and journalists regularly requesting interviews and property tours. Elaine approached this unexpected fame with characteristic thoughtfulness, using the platform to advocate for sustainable development rather than focusing on the rags to riches narrative that most reporters initially pursued. The diamonds themselves are actually the least interesting part of our story, she frequently told interviewers. What matters is that we refuse to accept conventional limitations about what was possible on worthless land that everyone had written off. That principle applies whether you're talking about swampland in Louisiana or struggling communities. Anywhere. The national attention brought visitors from across the country and around the world, transforming our once isolated property into a destination for environmental researchers, sustainable development advocates, and tourists fascinated by the unlikely discovery of diamonds in Louisiana bayou country. Local businesses that had once mocked Elaine's foolish land purchase now thrived on the influx of visitors. The Cypress Parish Tourism Board, which had previously focused exclusively on hunting and fishing opportunities, developed new marketing campaigns highlighting sustainable development and the region's unexpected geological significance. As our family adjusted to our new circumstances, we were conscious of maintaining the values and perspective that had sustained us through years of struggle. Despite having resources that would allow for virtually unlimited luxury, Elaine insisted on practical decision-making that prioritized long-term security and meaningful impact over conspicuous consumption. Wealth can be as dangerous as poverty if it disconnects you from purpose, she reminded us during a family meeting where we discussed potential investments. We didn't work all those years just to accumulate things. We worked to create security, independence, and the freedom to make choices based on values rather than necessity. One of those values-based choices was establishing college funds not just for Sophia and me, but for every child in Cypress Parish. The program, named after Daniel's late father who had been a passionate advocate for education, covered tuition at any Louisiana public university for local students who maintained minimum academic standards and committed to community service. During their studies, education was what allowed me to see potential where others saw worthlessness, Elaine explained at the program's launch. By investing in these young people, we're ensuring that the next generation has the knowledge and confidence to recognize opportunities that others might miss. The program's first graduates included Maria Fontenot, a direct descendant of Marie Claire Fontenot, who had attempted to develop our property in the early 1900s. Maria studied environmental engineering and returned to Cypress Parish to work at our center, bringing her family's connection to the land full circle in a way that seemed almost poetic in its symmetry. 5 years after our dramatic discovery, our family hosted a celebration marking the completion of the Mitchell Center's final phase, a conference facility where organizations from around the world could gather to share knowledge about sustainable development and responsible resource management. As twilight settled over the property that had been dismissed as worthless for generations, hundreds of guests gathered on terraces overlooking the bayou. Local musicians played traditional Cajun music while children explored interactive exhibits about Louisiana's ecosystem and geological history. Standing at the podium to address the assembled guests, Elaine looked momentarily overwhelmed by the transformation our family had experienced. She glanced at the old cypress stump that had concealed one of Caldwell's air shafts, now preserved as a historical marker, before speaking. If Frederick Caldwell could see what has become of his hidden mine, I think he would recognize a kindred spirit in our approach, she began. Like him, we understood that true value often lies beneath the surface, hidden from those who lack the vision or determination to look deeper than convention suggests. She gestured toward the center's main building, its living roof blooming with native wildflowers. This center stands as testament to what's possible when we reject artificial limitations. When I purchased this worthless swampland 15 years ago, I couldn't have imagined diamonds beneath our feet. But I did imagine possibility where others saw only problems. Looking directly at Sophia and me, she continued, the most precious thing we've discovered isn't the diamonds. It's the certainty that conventional wisdom is often wrong about what's valuable and what's possible. That knowledge is what I most want to pass on to my children and to everyone who visits this place. As the celebration continued into the evening, I walked to the edge of the property where our original drainage excavation had broken through into Caldwell's hidden chamber. The entrance was now secured with a custom-designed door that incorporated diamonds too small for commercial use, creating a sparkling portal between past and present. Looking back at the center with its solar arrays gleaming in the sunset, wetland gardens filtering water through natural processes, and people from all walks of life engaged in animated conversation, I understood the true legacy of our unlikely discovery. The diamonds had provided financial security, certainly. But the real treasure was the demonstration that perceived limitations are often just that, perceptions rather than realities. Our family's journey from ridiculed outsiders to respected innovators offered a template for possibilities that extended far beyond our particular circumstances. In transforming worthless swampland into a showcase of sustainable prosperity, we had created something more valuable than diamonds, a living example of what's possible when you refuse to accept conventional assessments of what has value and what does not. As twilight deepened into evening, the center's lights illuminated pathways through gardens planted with species that Marie-Claire Fontenot had cultivated over a century earlier. Visitors strolled along boardwalks above wetlands that once threatened to swallow our home, but now served as natural laboratories for environmental research. In that moment, watching people explore the property that had been dismissed as worthless for generations, I understood that our family's true fortune wasn't measured in carats or dollars. It was measured in the courage to see potential where others saw nothing, to dig deeper when conventional wisdom suggested retreat, and to transform crisis into opportunity through determination and vision. The worthless swampland that had been the source of so much ridicule had become not just financially valuable but meaningful, a place where people gathered to learn, to connect with nature, and to reimagine what's possible in their own lives and communities. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.